All right, so we had a question. One of the people that's been looking at the videos has asked the question. I'm not going to read it to you. I'm just going to kind of paraphrase it. I have trouble with inside English and making shots. And in further discussions in the comments, it went into this person is more comfortable shooting with outside English than he is, and actually I guess it could be a she. I think it's a he though. Is more comfortable making shots with outside English than with no English. And so I kind of wanted to get into this whole inside-outside English thing in response to that. The very first answer to a problem with making any shot that has a set of characteristics is to shoot the shot over and over in practice. That's the easy answer. But let's dig into why this might be happening. When I say a set of characteristics, for example, if you're having trouble shooting and making long shots, then practice shooting long shots. If you're having practice with jump shots, then shoot jump shots. And just work with them until they become second nature. When we're talking about side English, though, when we're talking about spin, let's talk about what actually happens when you spin the ball. So if this is the cue ball, here's the center of it, just for the sake of, and I know that's not straight, but just for the sake of understanding that that is the center. If I hit it to the right of center, let's say I hit it over here, right? And let's say I hit it 5 millimeters over and I hit it with exactly 20 foot-pounds of pressure. And I'm just making up these numbers, so don't hold me to them. If we're looking down on the cue ball, and this is the center, then we're hitting it about right here, okay? And what happens is, when you hit it, the cue ball goes out this way first, and and that may actually be a little overstated. It goes out just a little and then it swerves back in, okay? And it's not, God, my drawing abilities definitely need some work if I'm going to keep diagramming things. So, and I will show you this on the table. I'm going to try to get my slow motion to work well enough that you can see this. But okay, so here's the center line of the ball. That's the direction of travel. Here's my object ball. That's object. Okay, what actually happens is that this ball initially squirts off to this side. Okay? And again, I'm exaggerating so you can see it. It may only be a little tiny bit, but it squirts off to that side. But it also, because you hit it to the right of center, is making this ball spin counterclockwise. Okay? And that spin is going to pull the ball over the course of this. It's going to pull the ball back in so that, and no, it doesn't like swerve there. It's going to pull it back in to hit the object ball where you wanted to hit it. Okay? And this angle from the center of this cue ball to here is roughly the angle that the initial direction of travel takes. Okay, and we're going to talk about that in depth when I get around to doing part 2 of the Mass A stuff. So, ball spinning counterclockwise, cue ball squirts off to the side, spin brings it back into the center, it hits the object ball. Now the object ball, this works like a gear. So if you think about a gear with teeth, right, and another gear whose teeth are coming this way, right, then if this one is spinning this way, it forces this one to spin in the opposite direction. So if this one's counterclockwise, this is going to spin clockwise. Okay, that's exactly what happens with the balls. To a much lesser degree because you have no teeth to provide friction to them. But so if this one's going counterclockwise, that means that that object ball is going to pick up clockwise spin. And it'll be a portion of the velocity of spin that you have on the cue ball. So that's what happens if I put right-hand English on it, right? And right now we're keeping rails out of this. We're talking about in the open table. All right, well, now if I come over and I hit it 5 millimeters on the left, to the left of center, right here. If I hit it 5 millimeters to the left of center, with the same 20 foot-pounds of torque, and imagine we're using some kind of precision machine to do this, then exactly the opposite thing happens. First of all, when the cue ball leaves, if I'm hitting it on the left, it's going to make the cue ball spin clockwise. Exactly the opposite, right? Which means that the cue ball is going to squirt in the opposite direction. Again, going back to what we just said, it's going to squirt off in exactly the opposite direction, and its travel is going to be exactly the same, just on the other side. My lines don't line up, but these are the same. It's the same exact shot, it just goes off to the right and back, and then because this is spinning clockwise, this will be spinning counterclockwise. Okay? With no rails involved whatsoever, these two shots, whether you hit it on the right or the left of the cue ball, act exactly the same way. They have the same effect on the object ball, they have the same effect on the cue ball, they have the same effect on the path of travel. They're exactly the same, except on the other side. So, if I come out on the table, and I'm going to try to slow this down so you can see it. And I take an object ball and I put it on the spot. And I take a cue ball, somewhere here, and I put it on this spot. Notice that that spot has a dimple, so I'm going to put it actually a little ahead of the spot, but that's fine. Now I'm going to hit this straight at the one ball, and I want you to completely ignore what happens when they hit the rail. Don't care. What I care about is how they act in the center of the table. Okay? And so if I hit the cue ball on the right, one tip to the right of center, okay, and I hit the one in the center, you saw how that acted. Now I'm going to do exactly the same thing, one tip on the other side. Exactly the same. Okay, so we'll go back and I'll, and if you look, if the slow-mo worked, you would see that the cue ball takes a slight path off center, the curves back in, makes contact with the one. There's a little bit of throw that happens. You can see the English that transfers to the one when it bounces off the rail. But the main thing is, the only difference between those two shots was one time When I hit it on the right, went off to the left and came back. When I hit it on the left, it went off to the right and came back. But other than that, there's just no difference between them. Again, think about this in terms of if there are no rails involved. Okay? If I shoot that in the pocket and I hit it with right hand English, okay, you can see I've got a lot of spin on that. Okay, and I set the same exact shot up, and I hit it as close to the same speed as I can. Get straight in. One tip to the left. And again, a lot of English, but there was absolutely no difference in how that ball went in. Okay? But you're saying, well, but you're straight in, so what if you're on an angle? Okay, well, if I'm on an angle this way, and I use outside English, okay? As far as the contact and making the ball, nothing is going to be different if I use inside English. Okay, and this time I'm going to use, move that a little bit closer to where it was. Now I'm going to use inside English. And I have trouble making it. Again, I'm going to use inside English. And you see there was no difference between as far as making the ball, there's no difference whatsoever. One way the cue ball spins off the rail this way, one way the cue ball spins that way. No difference. So, okay, so why do you have a problem with this? With inside English? There are a couple of reasons you could have a problem with this. The first one is you've got a mental thing going on. And what I mean by that is you look at the shot and you say to yourself, hey, I'm going to have to use inside English to get my lead, but I suck at inside English. I suck at shooting with inside English. And so you psych yourself out of it, and you got in your own head, and you're missing the shots. And so you line up, and you miss the shot, and you wonder why you missed it. Well, you missed it because you got into your own head and convinced yourself that you weren't very good at inside English. How do you fix that? Well, the only way to fix that is to sit here and understand exactly what's happening when you shoot with English, with side spin. To understand it and to internalize that there is no difference between inside and outside English. None. The second thing that could cause this problem is your stroke. And what do I mean by that? If I stroke the ball and my normal stroke is to hit the ball and then come out to the side, so I do this when I shoot, well then when I'm hitting right hand English, I'm going to get a different result than when I'm trying to put on left hand English. And why? Because I'm trying to hit it on the left, but I'm pulling the cue over and I actually end up hitting it to the right, or I hit it straight. So how do we fix that? Go back to that very first drill from my very first video, and you practice hitting the cue straight up and down the table and making sure it comes directly back to your cue. If it doesn't, if it goes off to one side, then you've got a problem with your stroke. Practice your stroke drill. That's how you fix that problem. You get this to the point where you can literally do this with your eyes closed. Straight up the table, straight back down the table, ends up on the tip of the cue, right where you stopped. That's how you fix problems with your stroke, where you're jerking this cue off to one side or the other, or you're lifting up or pushing down. The third one is a little bit different. The third and final reason that you might be missing is that you tend, missing in shots with inside English, is that you tend to always use right side spin for your outside, and you always use left hand spin for your inside, or the vast majority of the time. You tend to one side or the other for inside and outside English. And you have a dominant eye that's affecting how you line those up. How do you fix that? It's a physical problem. It ain't gonna fix itself. The only thing you can do is practice to overcome it. So, I mean, those are the reasons that you miss inside English shots. Most likely, it has to do with the mental game. I cannot stress how important it is to have your mental game intact, understand what the balls are doing, understand not just what English you're putting on it, but why you're putting that English on and why the balls react the way they do. The more you understand about it, the less chance there is of picking up these mental things like, I can't draw because I always miss draw shots, or I can't make long shots, or I can't make shots when the ball's against the rail. And let's talk about, so up till now we've been talking about a table with no rails. When we're shooting pool, we are very, very deliberately not touching rails with the object ball. And so a shot like this one, we're going to try to put that one in without touching a rail, or we might hit the tit on the corner pocket, but we're going to try to make it clean. The one time the inside English can affect you is going down the rail when the ball is very close or frozen to the rail. And that's because, remember, if we're spinning this to the left, it's going to throw that to the right. So if you're shooting these, you need to minimize that inside English. Use just what you need to, because you might throw it off like that. I don't like using inside English on a rail shot and on a shot that's truly frozen to the rail, unless I have to. I will, but you'll see that that's a difficult shot to make if it's on the rail. And the reason is because everything you're doing with that cue ball and the contact and the transfer of English is taking this ball and pushing it away from that pocket. If you're shooting this rail shot, it is much easier to use running English, which naturally keeps the ball against that rail. But that said, I mean, it's not like you can't use inside English. It's just that this is one of those shots that you have to practice and practice and practice to get right. And then once you've got it, the point being that if it's on the rail, inside English makes it a little more difficult. That is true. If it's not on the rail, it doesn't matter. Outside or inside doesn't matter. It's just side spin. The only place where it actually makes a difference is after the cue ball contacts the rail or the object ball. But as far as inside or outside on a straight in shot, and when I say straight in, I'm not talking about, you know, literally straight in. I'm talking about one where you are cutting the ball in. Inside or outside English on this makes absolutely no difference. Same shot, you're just spinning it one way or the other. In one way you're throwing it towards the pocket, one way you're throwing it away from it, but just like any other open table shot, you're adjusting off of it. So, in answer to the question, hopefully I've answered that question. The short version is, inside and outside English should not make a difference in how you shoot the balls. If it is, you either have an issue with your stroke, or you got into your head, and you're psyching yourself out. So just don't do it. Again, inside or outside English doesn't matter to the shot, unless a rail is involved. If you're making contact with the rail along the way, yes, it does make a difference. But 99% of your shots, you're not making contact with the rail. So that's it. Hopefully I've answered that question as fully as necessary. If you do have additional follow-on questions, please feel free to post them below. And thank you very much.